Growing up, I remember my mom telling us it was time to go outside and play. Maybe she just wanted us out of her hair, but I like to think she also knew that it would be good for us. Either way, she was right. And tonight we will be talking about just how right she was. I was a park ranger one summer when I was in college. I got to wear the whole uniform, straw hat, green polyester pants, gray shirt, wide black belt. It was pretty cool. I was a bio major in college and loved all my environmental biology classes, entomology, ichthyology, marine biology, ecology, etc. Then I went to med school, had 3 kids, and practiced family medicine in southern New Jersey for 25 years. I missed the mountains where I grew up, so 8 years ago, I joined the staff of Cornell Health, where I took care of students and taught medical students and residents from New York City. Much of my focus with my patients over the years centered on the importance of a healthy lifestyle as a way of maintaining good health and preventing disease. Spending time in nature is a big part of that. As is probably true for many of you, I am happiest when I'm outdoors, and I find ways to be in nature as much as possible. In 2004, I took part in a medical mission to Nepal with an organization called Himalayan Healthcare. Nepal is one of the poorest countries on earth. Myself and a group of about 10 other physicians trekked to base camp of Mount Everest and set up mobile clinics to treat patients along the way. As a child, my dream was to climb Mount Everest. Although I didn't get to climb it, I did get to see it. Talk about awe-inspiring nature. I also like to take pictures, mostly of nature, and most of the photos in this presentation are mine. I hope you enjoy them. Maybe you will even experience one of the many health benefits of nature by the time we are done. We will talk about the what, why, who, how, and when of this topic. What are the proven benefits and what scientific evidence do we have to support them? Why is nature good for us? Are there scientific explanations? Who is nature good for? And can everyone benefit? How much exposure to nature do we need to benefit? And when can nature provide us with the most benefit? Where to begin? As you can see, using PubMed and the search term health benefits of nature, there were 9,860 results. As you can also see from this green bar graph, the number of research studies on this topic has increased exponentially in recent years. So obviously I needed to narrow the search a bit. So I used mostly review articles, which were articles that reviewed a whole group of other articles and sort of summarized them. I limited my search to results published in the last 10 years. There were both experimental and observational studies, and they included all ages. And I also just Googled it. While I was reading through the medical literature of the health benefits of nature, I came across some terminology that was specific to this topic. A nature-based intervention, otherwise known as an NBI, is any type of nature exposure involving a person or group of people for which there is a measured outcome. So an example of this would be showing people photographs of nature and comparing some specific variables such as blood pressure before and after the intervention. Another example would be asking a person about their level of stress before and after taking a walk in the park. When we talk about health, some studies differentiated physical health versus mental health. However, I think the two are so closely related that it can be really tough to separate them out, and we probably don't need to. The term green space refers to an environment with vegetation, such as a park or a forest or a meadow. Blue space, as you would expect, refers to environments where there are swaths of water, such as lakes, rivers, and oceans. Domestic versus wild nature refers to basically nature which has been altered by humans in some way, such as a farm or a garden, versus wild nature, which is nature that has not been created by humans or been changed by humans. Also, some studies differentiate urban environments from rural environments when studying green or blue space. In medicine, there has been a movement, I wouldn't say it's recently, it's probably been in the last 10 to 20 years, to practice what is called evidence-based medicine. In other words, we make recommendations to patients based on data, not just on our own personal experience. Likewise, just because one study shows a particular benefit from an NBI, it's important to do additional studies that confirm those prior results. I have tried to base this talk on the health benefits of nature that have been shown repeatedly and consistently. We've all experienced the amazing benefits of spending time in nature. I know for myself, some of my best thinking and best ideas come to me when I'm taking a walk outside. And it's no surprising to me that studies have confirmed that when you're in nature, it increases your cognitive functioning. So, what are the health benefits of nature? There is general consensus and good quality evidence to show the following benefits from exposure to nature. Better cognitive function, in other words, being in nature seems to increase our ability to think. Along with better cognitive function, many studies have shown increased brain activity. Studies using functional MRI measuring brain activity during various types of nature interventions have shown increased activity in certain brain areas. Many studies have shown that exposure to nature is associated with lower blood pressure, and this has been shown with a variety of different types of exposure and activity. It's also been shown that there's a relationship with time spent in nature and someone's activity level, although we do see benefits of nature even when there is no physical activity involved. For example, hopefully just watching this presentation. Many studies have demonstrated that people have a sense of improved sleep, as well as objective measurements of sleep quality. People who are exposed to nature either virtually or in person report less perceived stress and anxiety. The level of stress hormones in the blood have also been shown to be reduced after nature exposure. A review article by Najade et al. In 2022 entitled, "What is the Impact of Nature on Human Health?" reviewed 39 different studies of various nature-based interventions and looked at the results of these studies and concluded that 98% of the studies showed improved mental health, 83% showed improved physical health, and 75% showed improved cognitive health. They also looked at what factors increased the likelihood that the person would engage in a particular NBI. Factors associated with a higher level of engagement were increased biodiversity, a sense of wilderness, the opportunity to engage in physical activity in nature, and the absence of pollution. Even though we have good evidence for a myriad of health benefits, there are still a lot of questions to be answered. We need more long-term longitudinal studies to be able to answer the question, do people who spend time in nature compared to someone who doesn't live longer? We need more studies to know if spending time in nature can prevent disease. We know that exposure to nature can reduce blood pressure, but we don't have the data to take the next step, which would be to say that nature can reduce death from heart disease. It would be nice to be able to show that time in nature can cure disease, and there have been studies which have attempted to show such a relationship, but these studies are difficult to do. Every study I reviewed for this presentation included a section on the importance of continued research to answer some of these questions. It's important to remember that the research and the results of one research study should be replicated by many other studies to make a definitive conclusion about a particular finding. On the other hand, even if something hasn't been proven as beneficial, as long as it hasn't been proven to be harmful, then I'd say go for it. Since we have good scientific evidence that nature is good for humans, as we've discussed, the logical next question would be why? And what is the mechanism to explain these results? This brings us to another term for which I was not familiar. The most widely held theory of nature and health benefits is related to the biophilia hypothesis. The word biophilia comes from the Greek word bio, meaning life, and the Greek word philia, meaning love. Biophilia means love of life, and in this case, life referring to nature. Nature, as we define as all living creatures and the non-living environment upon which life depends, such as soil, water, and air. Another way of defining nature is the term the biosphere.
I found just what an incredibly vast topic.
What? Oops, I just heard somebody. Okay. Biosphere and its abiotic matrices. In the 1900s, a psychologist, pretty famous psychologist, Erich Fromm, coined the term biophilia for the first time. He described it as the psychological traits and biologically based traits of being attracted to all that is alive and vital. This could also be described as a person's affiliation with nature. Recent studies have suggested that the stronger a person's affiliation to nature, the greater the person is to benefit from exposure to nature, and the more likely they are to engage in pro-environmental behaviors. Around that same time, a prominent biologist, E.O. Wilson, also came up with the term biophilia as the evolutionary adaptation. This was his definition, the evolutionary adaptation that allows humans to develop a mental link to the environment. As long as humans have been on the planet, we have lived with and been dependent upon nature for our material and physical sustenance and to satisfy our human craving for aesthetic, intellectual, cognitive, and spiritual meaning. Over hundreds of thousands of years, we have evolved alongside our living environment, just as all life has. Only in the last 10,000 years or so have things shifted to farming and agriculture and brought us humans indoors with permanent living structures. As I was thinking about biophilia, I decided that master naturalists are probably biophiliacs, which I couldn't find that word anywhere, but it seemed appropriate to describe us as a group. So I think we're all just a bunch of biophiliacs and proud of it. So who benefits from nature? Short and sweet, everyone. There is extensive literature to support the health benefits and importance of nature for all ages. Well, people or sick people, people from all over the world, and all types of cultures. The caveat to this is that to benefit from nature, a person needs to feel safe in that natural environment. For example, if a person is terrified of snakes, they may not feel safe in a place where there's a high chance of encountering a snake, and therefore they may not get health benefits from that nature experience. If a person feels unwelcome and fearful when experiencing nature, they will likely not benefit. And in order to benefit from nature, the person has to be able to access nature. Without inclusive, accessible, and safe nature opportunities for everyone will not benefit from nature. So how much nature is enough? Researchers have attempted to develop guidelines for how many minutes of nature exposure is needed to benefit an individual. similar to the way that we do weekly minutes of exercise as guidelines. This is an area where there's still research being done, but one study by White and et al. In 2019 concluded that people who reported 2 hours a week of direct nature exposure reported higher levels of health and well-being. It was a study that was conducted in England with people of all ages, degrees of health, socioeconomic levels, and was felt to be a representative sample of the population. They also found that the benefits were similar for someone who did short bouts of exposure or for those who did longer but less frequent exposures. Studies can be difficult to interpret, especially in this type of study. There can be many and multiple confounding variables, such as whether the person was also engaged in some type of physical activity when they were in nature. There have been studies that demonstrated that physical activity done in a green space is more beneficial to your health than physical activity done in a gym or other non-nature-based environment. Some studies have shown that the most benefit is gained from exposure to nature where there is a high degree of biodiversity. Other studies show that the greater the person's degree of affiliation to nature, the higher the expected health benefits. Another study another review study of 14 studies used 22 different measures of mental health, and it was a college-age population. And it demonstrated that, quote, as little as 10 minutes of sitting or walking in a diverse array of natural settings significantly and positively impacted defined psychological and physiological markers of mental well-being. Although we may not really have enough evidence yet to say the more the better, I think it's a good idea. I kind of try to follow that motto and want to believe that anyway. So when do we need it? The extensive review of the literature on nature-based interventions and cancer survivors concluded that, quote, participants reported that nature was the most important resource in coping with their cancer, unquote. Children who are consistently and frequently exposed to nature develop a stronger lifetime affiliation with nature and are more likely to find time in nature beneficial. It is during particularly stressful times that we seem to derive the greatest psychological benefits of time in nature. We can benefit from nature even when we can't be outside. Virtual nature exposure has also been shown to have health benefits. And here's another thing I like. When do we need it? Any old time is great. There are so many different types of nature-based interventions that have been studied and are currently being studied. These four I found particularly interesting. So the first one, long distance walking. When I first heard this term, I thought of Forrest Gump, although he wasn't long distance walking, he was long distance running. And I thought that was pretty interesting that I remember in the movie, it was a difficult time for him at that point. My favorite way to spend time in nature is backpacking, either with my dog or with my family, as you can see in this picture. I think I look pretty happy, and I think I'm probably got some health benefits from that trip. Definitions of long distance walking vary. It is most commonly defined by distance. Many studies use a distance of 18 miles to categorize as an intervention of long distance walking. Some define it as a period of time ranging from several days to months. Pilgrimages would be including in this category, as well as backpacking or trekking. Motivations for long distance walking can be goal oriented, for example, to complete the Appalachian Trail. It can be spiritually motivated. It can be used as a way of dealing with a traumatic event, and it may be related to just the need for solitude. It is done in all types of nature, all varieties of people, all ages, all degrees of health, and it can be done alone or in groups. A recent review of the benefits of long distance walking showed improved mental health, especially in times of distress. Green exercise showed decreased blood pressure and increased immune function. Neuroimaging studies showed changes in the parts of the brain associated with mental health. It showed lower levels of stress hormone. Long distance walking can be described as a form of therapy. And the authors of the review article that I said wrote this about long distance walking, and I related to their description. Just as therapy is not necessarily pleasurable, the same can be said of long distance walking. Time and opportunity to focus on and contemplate difficult experiences without distraction may provide a space that is at times difficult or tiring, but nonetheless helpful. In 2018, I was involved in a pilot project which led to the development of a program called Nature RX at Cornell Health, which is the university's student health center. The program was initiated under the direction of the late Greg Ells, who at that time was the director of counseling and psychological services at Cornell Health, and Donald Rakow, a professor at Cornell University. My role as a physician was to suggest to students that they consider spending time in nature as a way to benefit their health, and then give them a written prescription for time in nature. The fun part for me was talking about all the various places on and off campus where they could access amazing nature experiences. Eventually, all the healthcare providers at the student center, which I think there's about 20 or 25 now, began prescribing nature, especially for students who were struggling with stress, anxiety, or depression. Initially, there were 4 universities with campus nature prescription programs, of which Cornell was one. Now there's over 50 US colleges and universities with campus nature RX programs. Many of the programs also include additional aspects such as online maps, photos, details about various types of green spaces on campus, hiking trails, birding sites, significant trees, and other outdoor spaces. Cornell also offers courses for students to learn about the health benefits of nature, as well as information about biophilic design. Park RX America is another example of a nature prescription program. Healthcare providers introduce patients to the health benefits of nature, and through exploration with the patient, develop a specific prescription that fits that patient's health status. The provider makes suggestions for green spaces in the local area and suggestions for frequency and time amounts that are tailored to the patients. Patients can also go on the site and make up their own prescription and share it with their doctor. Park RX, which is, the names are similar, but they're 2 different things, includes national, state, and local parks. The website, parkrx.org, has a lot of useful information, including a directory of parks across the United States that have prescription programs, nature programs, and a toolkit that you can use to start your own program. So no, this isn't taking a bath in the forest. However, the best description I encountered for forest bathing is, quote, a sensory immersion in the ambience of the forest. Walking through forests, of course, isn't a new practice. but the concept of Shinru Yoko is, which that's Japanese and literally translates as forest shower, although it's called forest bathing. It's only been around since 1982, but it is based on three traditional Japanese concepts, which I know I'm not going to pronounce correctly, but Yugen is about being so keenly aware of the beauty of the world around you that the deep emotions you feel can't be expressed with words. Komarebi literally translates to sunlight leaking through the trees. It describes the relationship or interplay between the sun and the leaves. Wabi Sabi celebrates the beauty of imperfection and impermanence. Forest bathing is different from hiking or backpacking or doing other activities in a number of ways. First, it's a guided experience in which persons trained in the practice guide the participants in order to help them experience the forest through all their senses in a very deep way. Studies have shown that forest bathing reduces stress and lowers stress hormones, improves immune function, and one study showed that there was a 50% increase in the number of what are called natural killer cells, which are involved in a process that can help reduce cancer cells and cancer. There's also evidence that I know I was going to have trouble with this, phytosides, which are natural chemicals produced by particular plants and trees, also have the ability to increase immune functions in humans. They also actually work for the forest plants to protect them also from insects and fungus and bacteria. For a good overview of forest bathing, the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy at anft.earth is listed there. It's expected in 2050 that 75% of the world's population will live in urban environments, and many people will probably not even have access to nature. Biophilic design attempts to create artificial environments that simulate natural ones as closely as possible in order to provide the ability to benefit from nature. Design that incorporates natural lighting, views of nature, areas of refuge, use of natural materials, plants, curiosity, and enticement have been shown to benefit health and well-being. I took this photo that you see here while visiting my son, who's been living part-time in Bali, Indonesia for the past 3 years. His living space was very small, but you can see it certainly incorporates the principles of biophilic design. I guess my son listened well when his mom told him to go outside and play. And because of that, I've gotten to visit him in some amazing places. This lobby looks very welcoming to me. The living wall, the natural wood table, and the leather chairs bring the outdoors in. I would really like to have a living room like this one. Note the natural stone floor, the earth-toned furnishings, the floor-to-ceiling enclosure that allows the occupant to experience nature with all their senses. Before we end, I'd like to take a minute to focus on children. This generation of children have fewer opportunities than in the past for nature exposure, mainly because of a lack of opportunity for outdoor play, discovery, and learning. Children are no longer free to roam and explore nature like when I was a kid. In urban environments, things like traffic or neighborhood safety can also limit the time children can spend in nature. Activities with friends like building forts, riding bicycles, sled riding, and swimming in ponds are becoming pretty rare. It's estimated that 50% of the world's children have little chance of being outdoors with nature. Instead, many children are spending much of their time indoors alone looking at screens. Studies have shown that our degree of biophilic personality develops over time with direct and recurrent exposure to nature. So a child's first experiences with nature are fundamental to their development of a strong affiliation to nature. Various studies have attempted to quantitate a person's affiliation with nature, and there are at least 10 different measures that are used in the studies. Many of the studies have shown that the higher a person's affiliation with nature, the greater the likelihood they will benefit from nature. The book, Last Child in Nature, was an international bestseller that is attributed with starting a movement about the importance of nature to children. I would suggest taking a look at it. It's a great book. Since the publication of the book, there has been much research on children and the importance of nature to both their physical and psychological development. And the author has since written many additional books, further elucidating the importance of exposing children to nature early and often. We have talked about the evidence of the many health benefits of nature, the theories about why nature is so vital to our well-being, how much nature is needed, and who benefits. Without the development of a love of nature in our children, there's little hope for our planet and all that lives upon it. So let's all find a child to inspire. Thank you for all you do, all the volunteer hours you donate. I'm amazed when Christy sends out the descriptions of what all you guys do. And thanks for listening. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And I'd also be really interested if any of you would be willing to share some of your stories about how you have benefited from nature. And whoops, no, I didn't mean to do that. And there's my email. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was excellent.
That was really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Should I stop sharing, Christy, or?
You can if you'd like, or you can leave it up. It doesn't matter either
Okay.
way. We can
Okay.
still see you.
Okay.
So if anybody has any questions, you can put it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and ask it. I'll ask the first one, which is from Dave Shepard. It says, is the nature deficit disorder a medically recognized condition? If not, what do you see as the reasons for that?
I don't know if that term, I've seen and read that term. I don't know if it's like well, for example, the DSM-5, or I forget what number we're up to, maybe it's 11, DSM-11 has characteristics and description of various different types of psychiatric disorders. I don't know that it's in there, but I would say that that term and the idea of that is definitely an accepted term, maybe not so much in the medical literature, kind of mainstream medical literature, but definitely in integrative care medical literature. I think that that's something that, people pretty much agree is happening.
I have a question, Margaret.
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I was just wondering if you've thought about if there's anything in the literature. I have a theory, absolutely no basis in evidence for it, but I've often thought about the story science is uncovering about how profoundly connected we are to nature, even though we're not aware of it. I mean, you come right from the stars, literally.
Right.
The oxygen you breathe, yeah. Okay, so
Yes.
I've often thought that there must be some sort of mental illness, broadly defined, or neurosis to be so unconnected to something, to be so unaware of something you're so profoundly connected to. You don't even know what you don't know. And
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if there's anything in the literature, even if you thought about the fact that, to be so, unaware of something you're so profoundly connected to has to have some effect, even if you're unaware of the effect. Am I making sense?
Yes, you're totally making sense. And there's a lot in the, literature on health benefits discussing that. There's a big connection, obviously, with evolution, how as humans, we've been around for 100,000 years, but in the beginning, we were just totally enveloped with nature. We survived with nature, our whole life was nature, just like everything else around us. And then over the years, and just in the very small last part of human evolution, it's changed in such a way that we've become less connected with nature. And more recently, it's really accelerated, with the use of computers and so many people living in urban environments and so many children just not getting outside and playing. So it is a big problem. And I think that's one of the things that I hope as Master Naturalist that you all can do is kind of spread the word about how important nature is, not just because you love being out there or because, you know, um, kids like to do a certain thing, but because it actually is important for your health and also really important for the future of the world. Because if humans begin to not have any affiliation with nature, there's not much hope that there'll be any motivation to worry about preserving it.
Right, right. More and more, what I read too, a lot of thinkers who have a good grounding in science are trying to marry it to some form of spirituality where one is informing the other in very
Mm-hmm.
appropriate and responsible ways. And I see that more and more in books on ecology, and it's heartening. And that's the approach I like to take too, trying to help people become aware of and make connections, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing with forest bathing, that there's a very strong spiritual component to that.
Right.
So that's something that I never really heard much about, and I might pursue it a little bit further. But that's kind of, I think, something that might be a way to engage people who might not otherwise think about nature, to kind
Right,
of immerse
right.
them and look at it from a spiritual standpoint too.
Thank you.
Peggy, I
Hmm.
read the book Last Child in the Woods back in 2005. And at
Uh-huh.
that time, I was working in London with teenage boys. And so some of the stuff in there, I recommend it to anybody. I love that book. And I did some of the activities in there with my boys. And it was a
Cool.
struggle at first, but I really saw a huge difference emotionally and kindness to each other, being a little bit calmer, being more willing to work on teamwork and not appreciating the nature a little bit more.
Hmm. Cool. That's great. Yeah, there's a program that I've just started to get involved with called Nature Strollers. That's in with the Audubon in Chemung County. Joan Ostrander does it, but that's kind of along the same lines where moms come with their really like preschool and very young kids, and we just kind of walk around and point out nature. And it really is fun to see, how the kids kind of really get into it once they have the opportunity to do it.
Peggy, Mary Ann put something in the chat box. She asks, any tips for overcoming kids or adults' fear of nature? This includes bugs, mice, snakes, etc., not just the reasonable concerns about not getting chomped by a grizzly bear.
Uh-huh. Um, well, I do think maybe trying to do things in nature that could avoid some of those things, initially, so that they don't equate nature, all nature with bugs or whatever. But sometimes, there's a technique called systematic desensitization where you have the person kind of think about something when they're in a calm, safe environment, like look at a picture of a bug when they're inside. And then sometimes when they go outside and actually see the bug, it can desensitize them to that fear. But I don't know anything. I didn't read anything about that in particular, but I think I would just like start slow and, kind of do gradual exposure. I'm not really good at reading the chat and talking at the same time, Christy, so if
Yeah,
there's anything in there.
yeah, I'll get the next question is, have you looked
Okay.
into research studies on mindfulness and meditation while experiencing nature and health benefits?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's definitely, so that's one of the types of interventions where they would have people, do mindfulness, maybe in a green space versus inside, or really forest bathing has a very large mindfulness component to it, because that's one of the things when you guide people into the woods, you're basically, it's not like you're taking a hike. Most of the things they do are less than a mile, and it's just, stopping and looking at the sky and feeling the plants and really tuning in with your mind to all your senses and nature. So yeah, there's a lot of nature-based interventions that use mindfulness, as part of the intervention.
Okay, Joellen asks if you're willing to share your reference list because she'd like to
Sure.
dive into
Yep.
it further.
If
And
you want to just email me, I can send it out.
okay. And then Camille, are you willing to unmute and make the point that you made in the chat box? Or I can read it for you, but I was going to give you the opportunity.
Sure. I just said, like, I think we need to consider the societal and systemic reasons behind why people don't have connections to the natural world. A huge part of that is our current systems that are in place don't allow for everyone to have time, money, access to the outdoors, feel safe in the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think by claiming that there must be something wrong with people or people are ignorant to not know about this is very ableist. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important for us as master naturalists, and important for me as a disabled master naturalist to bring this into the conversation, because it's not
Mm-hmm.
always black and white, like why don't people do this? There are a variety of reasons for why people aren't outdoors. They're working all the time, or it's not safe for Black people all the time to be in the outdoors, right? Like we've seen people get the police called on them for bird watching. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make about, who can benefit from nature is that, yeah, people have to have access to it. They have to feel safe. They have to feel welcome. We grow up in all different kinds of environments. Some of us have parents who are really into nature. Some of us have parents who, don't do any kind of outdoor stuff. So yeah, and then there's the resources involved. So yes, that's a huge, huge part of it is making it accessible for everyone.
Thank you. Thank
Yep.
you, everyone, for your questions, and thanks, Peggy, for the excellent presentation. And if you do share a list, I can share it with everybody who joined
Oh,
tonight.
okay.
So we had a nice size group, and it was a great way to kick off the new year. And so I thank you, and I thank everybody else for joining. And I hope to
Thank
see
you,
you.
everyone.